It's a nation in isolation. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Now's not a good time for celebration. Feeling good, share the wealth, help other people with their mental health. It's a nation in isolation. Don't eat fiberglass pink insulation. Yeah. Good advice there.
That was awesome. And you can't see the guests right now, but I can. And I can judge the way a show's going to go by whether they're smiling at Sean Cullen's creation and rendition of Isolation Nation, because I don't see how you can watch that and listen to that and not kind of smile. It's just so... and I'm going to use a word I don't get to use often enough. It's just adorable. I mean, he's so cute the way he does it. And, you know, it's got this catchy jingle to it. We've got two great guests today. I met one for the first time just a short time ago. And the other is being a buddy of mine off and on through the years. I don't mean that we haven't been friends at times. I mean, our lives haven't always connected over the years. I'll tell you who they are in a second. Well, I'll tell you the first one is James Wilder. James Wilder, Rookie of the Year in the Canadian Football League. James is now making a muscle, but no one can see it, James, so save the flexing. Perdita's making a muscle too, and well, let's come back to that. James was Rookie of the Year in the Canadian Football League with the Argos, won a Grey Cup that year, much loved in this city, and you know, just a guy in the community as well that you can't help but admire him. And one of the things he did was reach out on Twitter to his fellow CFLers with a plea to join him in what is probably the biggest cause of our time, and that of course is Black Lives Matter. So here's what he asked for and what I tried to give him. Roll it, Phil.
What's up, y'all? James Wilder Jr., running back for the Montreal Alouettes. I proudly stand with my CFL brothers and sisters against all forms of systemic racism and police brutality.
I'm Bo Levi Mitchell, and I proudly stand by my CFL brothers and sisters against all forms of racism, systemic or otherwise, and police brutality.
I'm Michael Landsberg, quarterback for the Toronto Argos, and...
Come on, ML, ain't nobody gonna believe that.
Sorry, I left out a word. Take two. I'm Michael Landsberg, former quarterback of the Toronto Argos, and...
Nah, bro, they ain't gonna do it either.
I did it again. Sorry. Gosh, what's wrong with me? Take three. I'm Michael Landsberg, former coach of the Toronto Argos.
Nope.
Assistant coach.
Bro, really? Just keep it real.
Trainer.
Goodness. No, bro. Not gonna cut it.
Mascot.
Bro, I'm about to block you, dog.
Fan.
Okay, that's a little better.
All right, I got this. I'm Michael Landsberg, never anything more than a fan of the Toronto Argos, and I stand with all my fellow brother and sister fans against systemic racism of any kind and police brutality.
Yo, there it is right there. Man, look, we appreciate you, brother. We stand together.
Whew, glad we got that done. And I was at one time one of the best Jewish arms in the city, okay? Just saying. Oh, you did that so well, I should say, because I reached out to you a couple hours ago, said, okay, here's the script. Can you do it? And like, I got it back in 5 minutes, man. James Wilder, what post-career, what are you looking at, man? Are you looking at acting? Are you looking at broadcasting? You got to do something with that charm.
Sports broadcasting. I went to college for communications, and hopefully I could take that into sports broadcasting. After
what's the dream job?
ESPN, TSN. Get on there. College game day. I want to stay around football. I love football. Been around it my whole life. Grew up around it, and I'm sure when my playing days are over, I'm not going to be ready to leave it. So could use some of my my influence and what I know of the sport and kind of brought it out to the fan base out in the world.
Right. Well, I could see that you were going to say it. Then you realized, I probably shouldn't say it that way. You were going to say, I could use some of my charisma. But then you realized, got to show some humility. But I can say it. So, James, you're now a Montreal Alouette. But let's put football aside for a second. The Alouettes. It doesn't look right to me, by the way. It doesn't seem right, right?
Yeah, I get that all the time. I'm still getting used to it myself. I actually did an interview the other day where kind of like how we did today, had to do a skit. And I found myself, it's just so naturally, I've been saying it the last 3 years. Hey, how you guys doing? It's James Wilder Jr. from the, and then I actually said Toronto Argonauts. And I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm tripping. So I'm still getting used to it, man, but I'm glad to be able to call Montreal home.
Yeah, Montreal's a great city. I mean, everybody has fun in Montreal. Let's go back to your time when you first felt like you were in a really bad place, when you felt like you were in the hole, which is how I referred to depression. When was that, and what did it feel like?
You're speaking on Toronto, correct?
No, I'm talking about earlier in your life when.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Earlier in my life, I was diagnosed with ADHD in college. Going through high school, I was the son of James Wilder, my dad. He's Buccaneers Hall of Fame. I'm #1 rated player in the nation. And then I get to college and faced a little bit of adversity for my football career for the first time. And I struggled with it. I had anxiety. I had ADHD. I was diagnosed with it. I started to take Adderalls. And I was struggling with adjusting to the fame. I was kicked out of the school. Not kicked out, but suspended due to a charge. I was arrested. And man, my whole world was crumbling. I didn't know how to handle it. I was embarrassed to go back home. I couldn't participate with football. I couldn't go to class. So I was just kind of alone in a college town, away from the family. And I struggled with it pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? When you add all of those things up, I mean, that's a recipe for really struggling and for questioning, what does the future hold for me? So what pulled you out of the hole? Was it just getting back into football and then, doing the kinds of things you did on the football field, or what?
Well, of course, I had great people around me. Somebody who helped me, Tony Dungy, is a guy he's like an uncle with me, and he's helped me out on numerous occasions to be able to just give words of wisdom. Of course, I have my father. I had a life coach as well. But I mean, just being able to face the reality that, listen, you're not alone. You're not the only one who struggles with mental issues, not mental issues, but just anxiety. And I'm not the only one struggling with that. So I just faced that. And once I faced it and kind of used that as a positive, to be able to use that downtime to talk to high schools and talk to different people in the community to help myself. Even though I was explaining to them to try to better them, it also helped me coming out my shell.
One of the first things I ever did in mental health in broadcasting was I produced a documentary, and it was called Darkness and Hope, Depression, Sports, and Me. And I was the me. We ended up interviewing 3 people for it. One of them was Darryl Strawberry. And Darryl Strawberry said something that really stuck with me. He said, man, because he suffered from suicidal depression when he was in his teens. And he said, as a Black young person in my community, I could never, ever have said, hey, I think I need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Do you think that still exists in your community? Because ironically, I talk about my community, I think it does still exist.
It definitely does in my community. And to touch on that, not too many people actually know, but I was hospitalized in college. I tried to commit suicide myself. And yeah, in 2012, during that time, I took just the whole bottle of Adderalls, and I was just trying to end myself. My now wife, she ended up finding me, ended up calling the police and calling the ambulance. And at that point, I was too drugged to really even remember anything. But I just remember still at that point, I was just embarrassed. I was like, please, like, if I live, I don't want anybody knowing about this. I don't want to see this in the news, or I don't want to live if this is going to be in the news. I just remember saying that. And that I was in such a dark place when I was in college. And after that is once I really kind of sought help and knew that I wasn't alone. I talked to a lot of people, of course, that was put in touch with me. But once you really figure out that you're not alone and you can fight the fight, and there's groups and there's people out there that can help you and that's been through what you've been through and even worse, that really helped me out, because I seen if these people can make it and they've been through exactly what I can been through, I'm blessed. We're not homeless. We're not, what I'm saying? We have food. We know where our next meal is coming from. I started to realize that I'm really blessed to really kind of be complaining about me not playing football, killing myself because I can't play football. And once I figured that out, that I had a team around me, I used that team. And then eventually I used myself to kind of spread awareness on it that they're not alone.
That is, thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, that you know, you in doing what it is we do here, and you meet someone, and then you like someone, and then they tell you something like that from their past. First of all, you admire the fact that you're sharing that. It's not for your benefit, right? You're sharing that for the benefit of others.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to what you were thinking when you thought, okay, well, you know, I'm going to end my life? Because that thought that you had is incredibly difficult for most people to ever understand. And understanding it probably is the only way we're going to prevent suicides.
Right, most definitely. I was home alone. I didn't have anything to do. I just remember looking all over social media and seeing the football team was practicing. They were having fun. I'm watching their interviews. Like I said, I was in Tallahassee. I went to Florida State University. I'm from Tampa, about 4 hours from home. Everybody's blowing up my phone. I'm embarrassed to answer the phone. I was embarrassed to go back home, and I was just there alone. And it was painful, and I was just crying watching these highlights of my brothers and my football teammates and coaches having fun. What they're in Tallahassee to do, school and football, and I'm here and I can't do it. And I was suspended for about a month, and I was probably about 2 weeks in. At this point, I was like, this isn't worth it anymore. I was too embarrassed to go back home. At the time, I thought this isn't worth it anymore. I should change that. And like I said, I didn't want to go back home, and I knew I didn't want to go through that pain anymore. So I knew I didn't want to harm myself too bad, and I was hoping. At the time, I was hoping that I could just take pills and fall asleep and just not wake up. Obviously, Adderall, you're not falling asleep on Adderall is one, but two, that was my goal. I didn't want it to be painful, and I just wanted to not wake up because the pain that I was going through. And like I said, I had people there. I had the Dungies there. I had the people that wanted to talk to me, but I was just so prideful, so stubborn. And like I said, embarrassed. I went from this kid worldwide, #1 in the nation. Everybody wants to be my friend. To, oh, this kid is a flop. This kid he blew it. He blew his chance. He flopped. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't know how to handle that. My dad was blowing me up, and I just isolated myself from everybody. My teammates were trying to check on me. I just wasn't answering the door. And I just remember sitting in my room like I wasn't eating or anything. So at the time, I thought, I don't want to put myself through this anymore, and I don't want to live without school and football anymore. So I tried to end it off. My girlfriend at the time, who's my now wife, she, I wrote her a long message and just told her, hey, I love you. Whatever happens, just know I love you. And she knew something was up, and she came by, and that's when she came by and called the ambulance for me.
Wow. I'm not quite sure how to follow that, other than to say, I mean, that is, do you know the power of what you have inside you in telling that story? Do you realize the benefit of you telling that story, just sharing the facts about how you felt, what got you there, and I would imagine how thankful you are that you survived and that your now wife helped you out.
Wow.
But I feel like I want to bring Perdita in. I'm just going to talk to Phil. Phil, we'll roll the songs afterwards. Let's say hello to Perdita Felicien, who I made reference to before as a friend for years. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
Good.
Hey,
Say
James.
hi to James.
Hello, James again.
Perdita Felicien in the Canadian Sport Hall of Fame, world champion in the 100-meter hurdles, and just one of the loveliest, smartest, most interesting people you're going to meet. And I said the same thing pretty well about James Wilder. So let's have a most interesting person off. We'll have a competition to see who wins. And it's a toss-up, man. It's a coin toss.
But can James hurdle, though? Can James hurdle? I don't know. I don't know.
That's funny. Can you, well, hold on, James, do I remember reading about you that you had like a ton of sacks on defense when you played in high school?
Oh yeah. I played offense and defense. I was the first player. I don't want to sound like I'm sitting here bragging.
No, tell it. We want to hear
it.
I
mentioned it, so you go ahead.
This player who was the #1 player on offense and the #1 player on defense in the nation. I was the #1 linebacker and the #1 running back in the nation in high school.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. So what did you think, Perdita, when you heard James's story, and in particular, the turn that his story took?
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I mean, I feel terrible that you went through that pain, but you're using that pain now for a purpose, which is amazing. Perdita?
Absolutely. Well, James, I'm grateful to you for sharing it because, Michael, when you talked about not really having that language growing up, I didn't have that language growing up. And I always thought, I don't suffer from mental health concerns at all. Obviously, like some people, I go, have my dips. So James, when you were telling that story, it's exactly what you said, Michael. I thought depression and mental illness always meant that you wanted to kill yourself. That was all I thought it was. So when I hear your story and the fact that your community does not discuss it, and hearing your story now, to me, I feel like you're liberating people that look like you. You're liberating Black people to understand that this can affect you at any point in your life. And Michael, hearing your story all these years, there's also a way to live and to exist and be triumphant with it. And so I remember just a couple, points when that would come up growing up in, I'm West Indian, my mom's from St. Lucia, but it would always be, well, it's the devil, or, prayed away. It was something that God could just take away, which to me really minimizes someone's pain. So I think what you're doing, James, by telling this story, like you say, Michael, it's not for him, but it's for people like me to be educated and to understand, actually, this is a thing. And it's not something that you can just simply pray away or minimize. And it's not anything that you've done to yourself. And I remember growing up thinking, oh, well, if you have, something wrong in here, well, then it's the devil. It's something that you've brought onto yourself. And it sounds really primitive now that I'm saying it as a 39-year-old woman, but really that thinking, I don't think it's completely disappeared. I think people still hold that. It's something that you've done.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, it is. It's still present, and that's why we named our charity "Sick Not Weak," because the perception is that what James has gone through and my experiences in my life with my own mental health battles are a reflection of weakness. Right? People don't want to be perceived as weak. I don't want to be seen as weak. So the key is not to get people to admit that they're weak. The key is to get people to believe that mental illness is not a weakness, that it's a sickness. And in fact, as I'm listening to James Wilder tell his story, I'm thinking he's anything but weak. And that's what makes this so crazy, is that people won't come out and share like James just shared because they're afraid they'll be seen as weak, yet he seems like the strongest guy on the planet.
Yeah, I wonder if there is a sense of just being judged and it not really being accepted. So I did have a family member who's younger than me that I mentor, who did say, she has children and they're just very difficult to deal with. And she told this to me in confidence. She said, I really felt like going to the garage and just ending everything. And that struck me here. And she's not said this to anybody because she really felt that her family members would not understand. They wouldn't accept her. But I feel like the more we discuss it and talk about it, hopefully the more people understand, to your point, it's not a weakness. It's not anything to be ashamed of, right? But we need to give people the freedom to say these things out loud without feeling condemned by it, which is why, James, I'm grateful for you saying that, because we need more people that look like you to say these things, right? And therapy is fine. Like, I finally realized it's okay to say you see a therapist. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for something very extreme, right? But it can, I feel like it's maintenance. I remember, you know this, James, like you go see your chiropractor, or, the same way you go see your physiotherapist if you've had a nagging knee injury. To me, I feel like it's absolutely healthy, and it should be encouraged that people see a therapist to discuss their feelings, whatever they might be. And I'm educating my own self, because like I said, I always thought being depressed just meant you want to kill yourself. But what I've learned, Michael, is there's, I guess, a continuum or a range of feelings that you can feel. There's so many different aspects to it.
James?
Yeah, most definitely. To add on to what you said, it's definitely nothing to be embarrassed about. And that was one of the main reasons I wanted to end my life at the time, just because of embarrassment. That was the biggest thing. If I wasn't built up to this star player in the nation or whatnot, I wouldn't even have that pressure or whatnot. And you don't have to be built up to even have that pressure, but it was just the fact where I'm getting at is the embarrassment. Like, it's a lot of people, professional athletes, trust me, and we all talking. I wouldn't dare use their names because they're not comfortable yet with me putting their names out there. But there's a lot of professional athletes that go through this. And when you realize this, you get this group together and you hold each other accountable. That's what helped. I have a couple people that's in the NFL now, and we hold each other accountable just because we all been through this situation. And in the sports world, it may be a little different because you've been playing sports. For us, how it is usually from the 4 people that who thought about doing suicide, who they're all black men and they're all in the NFL now to this day. We started playing off football since we were 6, and we don't know how to live without football. So when you're just one day you wake up and they call you in the office and say, hey, you're not with us anymore. It's over. And you can't get a call from anybody else. It's the embarrassment because you don't want to go home. That's the same thing every time. And when you realize that you're so worried about it, social media plays a role in that. Because social media, everybody's posting, trust me. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. That's why I always try to use my social media to post. Sometimes if I go through something, to even post that as well. Because social media everybody's only going to post like their life's perfect. So when you have these teenagers and anybody, not even teenagers, looking at social media and seeing that life looks perfect and theirs is not like that, that's what kind of drives the depression, because now they start to think, what am I doing wrong? But I can tell you, millionaires, I know millionaires who's depressed. I know poor people who's depressed, white people who's black people who's depressed. It's people go through it. Don't be embarrassed of it. And I always provide my social media. Hit me up on my social media, IAM_Wilder32. I'm not an expert and I can't even really give advice legally, I don't believe. But if you just need an open ear to talk to, hit me up, guys. I skim through my DMs all the time, looking for those. There's a lot of fans hit me up, but I skim through to look for anybody who's going through things that I could possibly help them with.
That is, you kind of sound like, I mean, that's how I talk every day, right? Which is, is making myself available, because like you, it's like I have a PhD in being a patient. I don't understand anything other than what depression feels like. And when you understand what it feels like and you can put it into words, then other people go, wait a second here. Yeah. You know what? I feel like I'm understood. And if we had, let's say, somebody random in your life who's too embarrassed to talk about their mental health, bless you, too embarrassed to talk about their mental health, was on with us. And we're all talking about this. And Perdita, you expressed yourself in the way you see James and the way you referred to me. And James and I are sharing our own struggles. That person on this Zoom conversation would be the easiest time on the planet for them to be able to come out and share, right? Because you're in a room filled with people who are sharing, because it feels safe. And when a guy who's done what you did, MVP in the 2012 ACC championship game, am I right?
Yep. That's the same year when I was thinking about committing the suicide, and I didn't. I stuck through. And I ended up getting that MVP later that year.
And if somebody, if somebody heard that, all of a sudden they're going to go, well, wait a second here. Just like Perdita said, it's not a sentence that's sentencing you to a life of misery and a life of failure, right? I think that's just there's huge power in that.
Most definitely. And I would say to everybody, the day that I spoke out, I felt the boulder lifted off my shoulders when I was able to speak out, and the support that I had, because people aren't out there judging you or thinking you're weak if you're going through any mental struggles. It's like you said, it's not a weakness. So if you guys can come out, and I'm not saying just blast out on social media, but if you guys come out the right way and open up to some people, you will have support. You will have support. And like I said, if you need that support and to keep it in between one or two people. There's a lot of programs out there for people, free programs out there for people who's having suicidal thoughts, and use these resources. You won't be judged. It's between you and them. And like I said, the pressure that you're feeling now, guys who's listening, maybe who's struggling with it, who's listening now, I would say open up. It was the best thing I've done. I felt the pressure off my shoulders. I didn't have to sit in a room embarrassed anymore, scared to talk to anybody. So please, please, please open up if you guys are hearing this and going through it.
Here's one question from Colin on Facebook. I wonder if the guests feel that racial issues add to personal mental health challenges. Perdita, what do you think?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think there's, oh God, we could take it so many different ways, but I know for me, when I saw the video of George Floyd, I numbed myself, because in the Black community, images like those are traumatic, but they're not really surprising anymore. But the mental fatigue of fighting this battle again and again and confronting it and feeling like you're screaming in an empty room, no one's hearing you, is frustrating. And I'm a person who cooks every day. I love to cook. I didn't cook for my family for a whole entire week. I couldn't sleep. And I just numbed myself from that pain and just facing what was going on. And I asked myself, what are you doing? I was protecting myself. I was preserving myself, because I don't know if you feel that way, James. I don't want to combat this again, but here it is in the open in this 9-minute video. Another Black life snuffed out. It was almost like the terror that we feel sometimes as Black people, even a pandemic couldn't save us. And that is real trauma that we experience, every day, all around the world.
Yeah, most definitely. And to add on to what she said, you definitely get traumatized by that. And when you get to a point where you kind of feel hopeless, and not to make this a real debate on who should be president or whatnot, but for the Black community, I think a lot of people, I can't speak for every person, but I think majority of the Black community feels like this is being condoned and promoted. This violence is being promoted by the president in the United States. And when I first seen this video, I cried. Like, I don't even have shame in it. Like, I cried because I have children. My wife, she's Puerto Rican and Italian. She's not even Black. So, I mean, nobody can call me racist. My sister, she's an officer. She's a cop. So I feel like I'm in the perfect situation to be able to speak out on this. And being an athlete, I was a little nervous because what happened to Colin Kaepernick. If you speak up, you're putting yourself on the line. And I was a little nervous, but after seeing that video, man, I cried, and I joined Black Lives Matter Houston. I joined POP, People of Peace. And I said, this has to be more than social media. And I've been getting out, as you guys seen, probably all of my social media, 12-hour days, 10-hour days, protesting peacefully, of course, meeting with the mayor, meeting with the commissioner, meeting with the chief, doing anything I can in my power and use my social media platform to try to get this fixed, because we're so tired. Like you said, you're just mentally fatigued of just seeing it, and this been going on. We just have social media now. We just have cell phones now, and when you hear stories like from my dad and my mom, not to put their age out there, but they're in their 60s. They were born in they were alive during the 60s. When you hear their stories, and then it's 2020. And I could tell the same stories to my children all these years later. It's not moving fast enough, and we have to take it in our own hands. We have to take it in our own hands. So we have to get out. This thing is worldwide. I know you guys are in Canada. This thing was in Toronto, Montreal. I seen Calgary. This is worldwide, and we need to capitalize off of it. This is it's embarrassing for our country right now. And to see everybody gather around is very inspiring, because like I said, I've been out there for 12-hour days, 10-hour days, and I've been locked arms with people of non-color. A white man next to me, he didn't whip out his phone not one time, and he's yelling his lungs out because he sees it. There's still a group of people who are still a little stubborn and act like racism isn't going on, but I think we're taking the right steps. I haven't been alive. I'm 28 years old, so I haven't been alive long enough to see everything. But I think this is big, and we must capitalize on it right now.
The Civil Rights Act was passed by the American government, Lyndon Johnson, the president at the time, in 1964. So in 1964, that's 56 years ago, they decided, you know what, there has to be equal rights in this country. And here we are 56 years later, and have we made progress? Of course, you can't put up a sign that says whites only, but that doesn't mean that people don't in their minds want to put that sign up, whites only. And it's kind of horrifying. I mean, the anniversary of D-Day was a couple of days ago, June the 6th, 1944. And, the president of your country was talking about how, you can't disrespect the flag, and especially on this day. Well, why did guys give up their lives when I say guys, men and women, why did they do that in 1944? So they could free Europe and then come back to a country that still discriminated against people like the two of you. I mean, it's horrifying. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me in this country that not my buddies who are black skinned don't have exactly what I have. That's just it's terrible. This is such a fascinating discussion. You don't have to say yes to this, but I'd like to continue this tomorrow. I don't know, Perdita, you have a beautiful 13-month-old. I say beautiful. I mean, that's what guys say, right? I mean, the truth is, I haven't seen your baby, and if I saw your baby, beautiful. I'm sure she's beautiful for sure. Yeah. So you're real busy, but James, so much more to say about this. And you have been such a, people just need to go to your Twitter page and to see how you have grabbed this in a very, even a grounded way, right? You're not gonna change people if you burn down their buildings, right? I understand why someone would want to do that. I mean, eventually you go, well, no one's paying attention to us, right? Eric Garner, what was that, 2016 or 2014, when he was choked to death, and the cop just got fired last year. So now I'm ranting, and it's not my rant to have, but I think it's important for white people like me to be just as horrified about what has gone on.
Not to cut you off, I'm so sorry. Can I say something though? It is. I mean, I just heard you say, it's not your rent to have. What I've been telling people all over my Twitter is, at the end of the day, we need every race to come together and rent for us. It is your rent to have. You can stand. That's the movement I have going on. We stand together. You can stand with us. And what I tell my people, I have all through high school, I lived with a white family. And I lived 3 years with a white family in their household, full time. So I know the lives of living in a black household, in a white household, and they have children as well. So their views on cops and our views on cops is just two different things. It's a lot that's going on. But what I explained to that family, because they all reached out to me, we want to help. We want to help. So I'll use this time to say, speak up. Silence is violence. If you're not speaking up, if you see wrong and you don't speak up and you're just sitting there and you're just watching it, you're part of the problem. And right now, I try to explain to everybody right now, you don't have to understand to take a stand. You can take a stand with us and support us any way you can. And if that's social media, if that's finding a peaceful protest to donate to, if that's even getting out there yourself for free, getting out there and being heard with us, voting. And like I tell all my family and brothers and sisters of non-color white people, reach out to other white people, because it's not many black people right now saying, oh, well, what about this? Or, oh, what about that? But there's still a few, and you see it all over my Twitter page. I lost since I've been doing this, and it's all been positive, and you see my peaceful protest, I've been losing followers randomly.
That'll happen.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, I lost a couple thousand followers. And I'm just like, wow, that says enough. So we need our white brothers and sisters to speak up. Because we're not going to pretend like racism, we're not going to pretend like my white brothers and sisters aren't around racist people. Like I said, my parents, they were born, not to throw their age out there, but they were born before 1964. They were alive. So that means my white brothers and sisters has parents who were alive during that time too. So they were raised one way to hate a certain group, which 9 times out of 10, that probably rubbed off on them. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I'm not saying that about everybody, but there's still a large group of people who was just raised that way. So if they could hear they're not going to, that group isn't going to listen to people of color like us. They need to hear from you guys, and you guys need to, and when I say you guys, Canadians, white, any other color, people of non-color, need to hear from you guys to actually inspire them and say, hey, we're not black, but we see right and we see right and we see wrong. And what's happening right now is wrong. And what I say when I find myself not battling, but going back and forth with a lot of people saying, hey, all lives matter. Stop saying Black lives matter. Well, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. And when we say, I want to get this out here, when we say Black lives matter, it's not saying that the white lives doesn't matter. It's not saying that any other life doesn't matter. The Black lives, we're crying out for help right now. You know, we're going through something at a rate that in our country, in our own country, that no other race is going through at the rate that we're going through. And we're suffering right now. So an example I would like to use is if you see a house on fire and you're gonna say, hey, are you gonna say, hey, all houses matter? Or are you gonna try to help that house on fire? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're gonna put that house's fire out.
One more time, I'm sorry.
You're gonna put that house's fire out is what you're going to do.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Put that house's fire out. You can't say, well, that house is on fire, but all houses matter. We understand that, but let's help the house that's on fire right now. Yeah. And I'm sorry to rant, man. I went on a little too far, but
no, this is meaty. We need way more than an hour, Michael. But I think, I think what I'm seeing and feeling is, for a long time, I didn't speak about this publicly. I've been asked, Michael, from a lot of outlets here in Canada to speak about it. And I've just been feeling so much emotion around it that I couldn't do it. But I feel better now. And when you go online and you see things like hashtag All Lives Matter, it's exactly like you said. That's not anti-whiteness. Saying that all Black lives matter is not saying that white lives don't matter. But I think what is happening now is, white people really have to confront this discomfort of privilege and what it means to be privileged and what does that mean. And when they hear Black Lives Matter, I think for some white people, it's almost like a personal indictment that they're being called racist, which is not what is happening here. We're simply asking for equality. We're simply asking for a more even playing field. And, if you think about women getting the right to vote, they had no power. Women had no power. It wasn't until the men in power gave the women, right, the right to vote, did women actually take that power. So when you say it's not your rant to have, Michael, actually, James is right. It is your rant. I want to see more white people ranting, people who have a public platform and people who challenge their racist Uncle Rick at the dinner table, right? Yeah. That is what we want to see. And if we start dismantling this, each of us individually, however we can, if you are a CEO and you take an inventory of who you're hiring, what percentage are people of color? What percentage is Black? Change that, hire them, promote them. If you are a stay-at-home parent and you talk to your kids, talk to them about race, make sure their library is diverse. So when they see people that don't look like them, it's normalized. It's not a thing. And we can discuss individual racism, like someone calling you the N-word, or we can talk also about systemic racism. But I think when people hear this cry for justice, I think for some people, it feels almost like you're saying I'm a bad person. You're saying I'm racist. I have Black friends. Thank you for your evidence, but that's not action. We need actual action. And that's for every single person who is not a Black person or a person of color to do what they can, because that's the only way to share the power. And that has to happen by, people speaking out and staying in their discomfort, because it's not about their feelings right now, right? It's about, how do I change this? Like you said, Michael, my daughter's 1. She's beautiful. I don't want to be 17 and dealing with this. Why are we still dealing with this? But I think for the first time, that video of George Floyd captivated everyone's attention because, one, it was so heinous. You're on his neck for 9 minutes. For 3 of those minutes, he was completely unconscious, most likely dead. He has his hands in his pockets. What the heck for? And then you're looking at the camera with all these people pleading with you to let this man get up. There's something about that I finally feel like people who are not Black are awakened to this. Maybe it's because we're all home and this pandemic has kept us at home and we're consuming social media more. But we're all now looking at this and Black people are like, oh, wait, we've been known this. This is what happens. Police can kill us. And it's hard for Black people to seek justice against people who are in authority, and especially if those people are white people. And that's simply what our cry is. It's not saying all white people are racist. It's simply saying, help us get equality. That's all this is.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna mention it again. It'd be great if one or both of you could come back tomorrow because what's that?
I will be down for that. I'll
okay.
Be a bit.
Well, I knew what you meant. I'm not the whitest guy on the planet. I knew when you said I will be down what that actually meant. But you know when I said when I said it's not my rant to have. I didn't mean it's not my place to say it because I believe you will get nowhere in this time if white people don't give up what it is their advantage, and they're not going to give it up without you taking it away, and without people like me who are white saying, we're not entitled to this because otherwise, and I'm particularly sensitive about this because I'm Jewish, and during the Holocaust people didn't speak up. It was like, hey, it's not my problem. Hey, they're not coming for me. I'm just paying attention to my own self. And what happens, I'm trying to remember the saying, something about, those, all it takes. Okay, I'm going to look it up.
Tomorrow, bring it tomorrow. I want to hear it tomorrow.
I'm going to bring it tomorrow. Okay, hold on one sec. Okay, you know what? We'll hold on to the songs for tomorrow. That's great. You guys, I just feel like maybe this is the time where things will begin to change. But then I watch Republican politicians in the United States talking about there not really being a need to change. And yeah, you know what? There's some bad apples. Well, the bad apple theory isn't going to cut it. And I think that, this is like a chance to get it right. And I just pray that we do.
Yeah. And you know what, this feels like a revolution of sorts to me, because I'm 38, 39. Oh God, I'll be 40 this summer. I've not lived through anything like this. And I assume neither of you, James, and even Michael, this feels different. But here's what I'll say about this. In a few weeks or a few months, maybe this conversation around Black Lives Mattering and Indigenous Lives Mattering and people of color really mattering and white people confronting their privilege, in a few months, this conversation might dwindle off. I hope it doesn't. But really what this is a lifelong commitment. It's a lifelong investment. And it's not for people of color to change it, because we are not the ones who have created this, right? We are really, I don't even want to use the word victims, but it happens to us. So it's not really for us to fix it, right? It's not our responsibility. So when I say it's a lifelong commitment, it's for every single person who is privileged, right? To really examine, what does that privilege look like in my life? Doesn't mean you're a bad person. And in fact, I don't want any white person to feel guilt. And I feel like some have reached out to me that I haven't heard from in a long time from a sense of guilt. I don't want that for my white friends. All I want you to do is examine this system that was built for you. And you're born into it, right? You didn't choose it. You're white. No one's blaming you for that. Please don't feel blamed. But the point is, you've benefited from this system. If you look at healthcare, if you look at housing, if you look at work and education, it's a privilege to look around and see people that look like you. When I go into a newsroom, the times when I was a news reporter, there was no one that looked like me. When I open a magazine, no one looks like me. When I go on here, not many people look like me, right? That is a privilege. And that's normal to you. For the rest of us, it is not. And so for me, when this conversation is over and it's not cool or popular to say, hey, Black Lives Matter, what are you doing? What are you doing in 6 months, in a year, to make sure that our children, my Nova, is not having to march, right, in downtown Toronto? She shouldn't have to march over this kind of stuff, right? This is what we want to stop.
By the way, ask me what the quote was. Say, did you figure it out, Michael? Ask me.
Did you figure it out?
Yeah. All that is necessary for evil to succeed is that good men do nothing. That's the quote. I'd like to say I made it up, but I don't think.
Don't plagiarize.
Edmund Burke Reed would be super pissed off at me for doing that, and I've pissed him off before. So there you go. Okay, well, you're gonna have to wait tomorrow to hear your songs. By the way, you when does your book come out?
It was supposed to come out in April. We're all ready, but it's next March because of COVID. It just wasn't a time to promote a book. So next summer.
That how long in the writing for you?
It's all completed. It's done. It's packaged. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna do a shameless plug in my office. Okay, hold on. This is it. Sorry. This is it. You see it?
Yeah, just get it a little closer.
But it's all ready to go. It's just, hold on, I'm a mess here. But it was ready to go, but next year. So next March.
Okay, well, we'll talk more about it. Thanks, guys. This was really special. And man, I mean, my dream for this show, my dream has always been to do a show like this, and to be able to say, okay, well, you know, it's a show that was based on the concept that people need to hear mental health sharing to feel like they're understood, or better still, if they're one of the 90% of the population that cares about someone with a mental health struggle, maybe it'll give them a better idea. So, you know, we got such valuable information from the two of you, and then to take it to talk about the current climate is kind of like, oh my gosh, pinch me. This is amazing. Tomorrow you're going to be on with a guy named Orlando Bowen. He played for the Argos.
I know Orlando. Mm-hmm.
Do you know Orlando? His story is
incredible story.
His story is incredible. He was beaten by Toronto cops, and they planted cocaine on him. And it took him for ages to clear his name. And, you know, after I interviewed him on the radio last week, and I said to him, because I remember he was a guest repeatedly on Off the Record before that. And I remember saying to the people that I work with, oh my gosh, that guy he's so well-spoken, and he has fire in his eyes that you don't always see in people. And he was in a parking lot. They dragged him out of his car. They beat him, and they put cocaine in the back seat, and then they arrested him. And it took forever for them to drop the charges. And I said, well, did they ever charge the cops? And he said, nope. I just thought, okay, well, that's a wrong that should never happen. So that's tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, James, you're coming for my job, I know, and that's okay, because you got something too, the two of you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. And it's Isolation Nation tomorrow, where we talk about stuff that needs to be talked about. And so what am I supposed to do here? You were given this, James?
Oh, that means like peace out, but we can dip out with the fist up though.
I feel that too.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, peace, I know. That's our V for victory. And peace was from the 60s. And this is new to me a little bit. Thanks for giving me the
solidarity
the right to do it. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye. Fun. That was so fun.
Oh my gosh.